Alright everybody, welcome to the lab today. We're going to be doing the synthesis lab. First of all, our first step is to organize or gather all of the equipment we'll need. Now here are some of the pieces of equipment that you might be confused on. The first one is the balance. It's also called a scale. So this should be in the top drawer at your lab station. The next one you might be confused on is the weigh boat. A weigh boat is a little piece of plastic that looks like this. We use it when we need to weigh something that's a granular or grainy mixture. What's nice about the weigh boats is they're very light, but they're also very bendable. So we can actually take our weigh boat and we can bend it like this for when we need to pour things, for example, into a test tube. The test tube tongs are different than the other tongs. They are designed like this. They have a pincher. So we can see we pinch them open and then they stay closed on their own. When we need to hold a test tube, this is very helpful because we don't want to spend the whole time clenching our hand. We just want it to stay all on its own, like so. Next up, old test tubes. There are small and large test tubes in your drawer. I would say the best size is about this big, so medium. And then you want to look for test tubes that are old. So you want to try to find ones that have things stuck to the bottom of them. You want to try to find test tubes that maybe have discoloration, speckling, like this one. We can see that there's like brown at the bottom of this. So this would be a good one to try to get rid of. It's older. So this will be my old test tube, my test tube rack. Our magnet is actually this piece. So it's small and chunky. Our steel bar is this piece. So this is not magnetic. This piece is. We're going to use the steel bar at the end, but it's helpful to have the magnet on it so we can manipulate it easier. The other equipment we might need is our compounds. You'll have to grab these from the plastic bags. We have Fe, iron, and S, sulfur. One's brown, black, one's yellow. And then at your station already, there should be a Bunsen burner. If you're somewhere there's not a Bunsen burner, you are in the wrong spot. Now the first part of our instructions, it says to pass the magnet under both sulfur and iron containers. So we're going to keep the iron and the sulfur in their containers, but we're going to pass the magnet underneath them to see if anything happens. You're going to do this with both containers. That's step number one. Step number two, you're going to weigh your test tube. Now choose your test tube wisely, and you can't change it halfway through. So if you forget this step, it'll be a real problem. When you are using your scale, make sure it's turned on, and then give it a second to zero itself out. If it says some funky number before you use your test tube or before you weigh something, it'll be wrong. So once you've chosen your test tube, you're going to weigh it by laying it down, and you'll record that mass in your document. Next step says to put the test tube aside and put a weigh boat on your scale. And then it says to tare it. So it's referring to this button right here that looks like a T. Right now it has the weight of the weigh boat on our number, but we want it to say 0. We only want to weigh the stuff we put in the weigh boat, not the weigh boat itself. Next step, it says we need to measure out 2 grams of iron, 1 gram of sulfur. Now it says you can do this using a scoopula, but you could also just eyeball it. So we're going to open this up. You can go ahead and just pour this out. Obviously you're wearing goggles right now, but you want to get as close to 2 grams as possible. Now when you need to get more precise, you can tap it with your finger like this until you're getting real close. Dang it. So see if you can get exactly 2 grams of this and then add another 1 gram of this. So I overdid it. I have 3.05 grams of my substance. Hopefully you guys got closer than I did. With all 3 grams together, we're going to take the weigh boat off the scale. We're going to make sure it's all mixed together like mine is here. The brown is in with the white, or sorry, the black is in with the yellow. Then we're going to transfer this to a test tube. So same test tube I weighed earlier. Now when we do this, it's hard to pour from this into this. So you can bend your weigh boat like this and then pour it out carefully. The smaller your test tube is, the harder this part is. So maybe go for a bigger one if you're worried about it. Now we have our test tube with our substance. Now people always ask, how are we supposed to weigh the test tube if it's not flat on the bottom? First of all, we're going to make sure our scale's at 0, and then we can lay down our test tube without anything spilling out of it. So this is the weight that we would record in our own notes. Lay down the test tube, don't let anything spill when you weigh. This next part's really, really important. Make sure when you use your test tube tongs, you have them at the top of the test tube. This is the top. The bottom has all the stuff. We want these near the top. The goal is to not put the metal over the fire because metal gets hot and we will be holding this metal. So test tube tongs go towards the top, and when we hold our test tube tongs, we're going to do it like this. So just the very tip of our finger is holding the very tip of the test tube tongs, and the tip of the test tube tongs are holding the tip of the test tube. We only want very small amounts of coverage here, okay? Be very careful at this part. Now, before I will light your Bunsen burner, I'm going to ask you to show me how you're going to do the lab. So first of all, I'm going to check to make sure that your test tube is at the tip with the tongs, and that when you hold it, you're holding it like this, not like this, because that can burn your hand, like this. I'm also going to watch, I'm going to want to see you hold it over where the flame would be, but we're not going to be really close like this. That's too close. Instead, we're going to hold it up higher and a little bit farther away. So a little higher, a little farther away. Again, we don't want it to be down here. We want it to be above the fire. The other thing, notice how I'm angling my test tube, so it's not straight up and down like this. We have it at an angle. And with that angle, we're making sure it's not pointing towards anyone's faces. So I'm not going to angle it towards my own face. That would be terrible. We want to angle it to our right or to our left, where other people are not standing. We don't want to angle it backwards, because then look, my hand would be over the flame. We don't want that. So to the right or to the left, holding it only on the tip, angling it to the side. Now when gases come out of this, they're going to come out through this side. So the closer to a window might be better. You would hold it over the fire like this. Now I'm going to ask you questions like, how do you know when it's all done? How do you know when you're done holding it over the fire? That's our first question. The second question I'm going to ask you, what do you do when it's all done? What's your next steps? The third question I'm going to ask you, when can you set it down and where do you set it down? After all those questions are correctly answered by you, then I'll light your Bunsen burner and then you can do this part of the lab. Last part of the lab, you will need a paper towel. You're also going to need your magnet and your steel bar, this part. Now, the instructions say that once it's cooled down, we can set it down. We're going to take our test tube, and it says we're going to break it open. Before we do that, don't do that yet, just pause. Before you break it open, you're going to test if it's magnetic still. So, keeping it in the test tube, you're going to test if it's magnetic or not. Oh, heck. I haven't lit mine on fire yet, so don't worry about that. But, you're going to test if it's magnetic. Then you're going to lay down your test tube inside a paper towel. You're going to roll up your test tube. We're going to break this test tube open, specifically the bottom part that has our substance. So you want to carefully cover the top and the bottom and the sides. We want to roll it up so that when we break it, glass doesn't shoot out at us. So rolling it up. You don't need a ton of paper towel, but you do need enough to keep it safe. All rolled up. The next step, it says to carefully tap the bottom of my test tube until it breaks. We're going to use this to break it open. It's nice, sturdy, heavy, but safe. So you're going to hold it, you're going to hit this, tap to break it open. Once you've broken it open, you can carefully unroll your test tube, watching out for broken glass. And you're going to be left with your substance and the glass that surrounds it. Using your scoopula, let me grab mine. Using your scoopula, you're going to very carefully pick around and look at the substance you made without touching it with your hands. So, what's the texture look like? Is it the same stuff? Now that it's come out of the glass, can you break it open? Or is it all stuck together? Does it look like the stuff you started with? Once you're done looking at your substance, you're going to take your whole paper towel and everything here, and you're going to take this whole thing and throw it in the trash. No, this has broken glass. No, you're going to put it in the broken glass container. Let's see what that looks like. This is our broken glass container, broken glass only. So when you're throwing stuff away, like our wad of glass and paper, we're going to take this whole thing and put it in the bucket, along with everybody else's. We're never, ever, ever going to put our hands in here, because there's glass in here. So the whole thing goes in the bucket. No trash, ever. When you're all done, make sure you clean up your station. So all your supplies needs to be put away, back in your drawer, back in the right spots. Again, make sure your Bunsen burner is turned off. So these levers should be pushed all the way to the side. If you hear anything, that means you did it wrong. Any weigh boats that you used need to get thrown away. And then any containers like this that you have need to get put back where you got them. The thing that we're going to be short on is magnets. So make sure you're putting this back as soon as you're done with it. All right? All right, guys, be safe.